In the heart of every self-sufficient farmer, there's a spark, a burning desire to break free from the chains of a system designed to keep us dependent. Not just dependent on overpriced food or unreliable power grids, but dependent on a version of science that's been sanitized, packaged, and sold to us like processed cheese. Out here, in the realm of real self-sufficiency, we're not just growing tomatoes and keeping chickens. No, we're building generators that tap into the energy fields the old textbooks conveniently forgot to mention. Ether-powered dynamos, self-looping pulse motors, and radiant energy receivers. The kind of technology that Nikola Tesla once whispered about when the moneyed elites were too busy figuring out how to bury his ideas under corporate patents. This isn't fantasy. It's history, stripped down to its naked truth. Back in 1901, Tesla himself told J.P. Morgan, "I propose to generate electric power and transmit it without wires all over the world." Morgan famously replied, "Where do we put the meter?" That, my friends, was the moment the world got steered away from freedom and into a grid of economic servitude. Because true freedom, the kind that libertarians revere like a sacred flame, starts with controlling your own energy. If you can grow your food and generate your power without permission from any authority, you've already stepped outside the invisible prison. And that brings me to why we're here today. Self-Sufficient Backyard proudly welcomes you to a journey of radical self-reliance. This isn't a lifestyle trend. It's a return to the ancient covenant between human beings and the earth. A pact our ancestors understood without needing scientific papers to explain it. You build your shelter with your own hands, you harvest the sunlight directly, and you turn salvaged scraps into systems that feed, heat, and power your life. This is what our forebears called common sense, but today it feels more like rebellion. Let me take you back to the first outhouse. Yeah, you heard that right. Our off-grid homestead didn't start with a cozy cabin or fancy solar panels. It started with a simple wooden outhouse, built from salvage boards pulled out of a collapsed barn. There's poetry in that, isn't there? Freedom starts with digging your own hole. And from that humble beginning, we built our first little workshop, piecing it together with nails that had already lived one lifetime and were now ready for their second act. The house itself. Oh, what a glorious patchwork quilt of salvage and ingenuity. $5,000. That's all we had. Every beam, every plank, every window pane told a story of resourcefulness. The dump was our hardware store. The woods were our lumberyard. The sky itself, our blueprint. I wish I could show you the look on my neighbor's face when I told him the entire roof structure came from a barn we tore down nail by nail, beam by beam. "You people are crazy," he said. But crazy is just another word for free in a world that worships convenience. Now, solar panels didn't appear on the roof overnight. At first, it was candlelight. Romantic, sure, until you're trying to fix a leaking pipe at midnight with nothing but a flickering flame and a prayer. Then came the first solar panel, a small, almost laughable thing hooked to a marine battery. It gave us enough juice for a single light bulb and the kind of fragile hope only pioneers know. Over time, we added more panels, upgraded to lithium batteries, and learned to balance technology with simplicity. Solar isn't the holy grail, though. It's just a stepping stone. The real goal is a generator that doesn't bow to the sun or the wind, a generator that taps into the endless sea of energy Tesla tried to give us. That's the future we're building toward, one experiment at a time. And every nail we drove, every mistake we made became part of the story. Like that first brutal winter when the walls still had gaps big enough to throw a cat through. We slept in snowsuits by the wood stove, learning the hard way that comfort is a luxury paid for in sweat and scars. But here's the secret. Every time you solve a problem with your own hands, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. That's what makes self-sufficiency a holy act. It's not just survival. It's a declaration that no corporation, no government, no economist gets to tell you what you need to live. This house, this lifestyle, this entire off-grid journey, it's a living tribute to the spirit of libertarianism in its purest form. Not the caricature you see in the media, but the ancient truth that human beings are meant to be free. Free to think, free to build, free to fail and try again. The moment you accept that responsibility, you stop being a consumer and start being a creator. That's the revolution they don't want you to know is possible. So, welcome to Self-Sufficient Backyard, where we don't just teach you how to grow food or build a composting toilet. We remind you that freedom is your birthright. And every time you hammer a nail, light a fire, or plant a seed, you're not just building a homestead. You're reclaiming your rightful place as a free human being in a world that's forgotten what that means. Now, pull up a chair, grab a cup of homegrown mint tea, and let's dive into this crazy, beautiful, back off-grid life together. This is where the real story begins. A self-sufficient economy isn't just about survival. It's about reclaiming the power to decide your own fate. See, when you control your food, your water, your energy, you're not just building a farm, you're building a fortress of freedom. It's a quiet revolution, done with seeds instead of slogans, compost instead of committees. And the funny thing is, this kind of freedom, the real, tangible, dirty hands kind, it's exactly what the greatest libertarian thinkers saw as the foundation of a just and peaceful society. Not a world where a small elite manages the rest of us like cattle, but a world where every individual stands tall, shoulders squared, knowing that their fate is their own damn responsibility. Contrast that with the so-called service economy. You know what that really means, right? It's an economy where you produce nothing tangible, nothing that nourishes the body or sustains the land. You become a cog in someone else's machine, selling your time, your creativity, your mental energy to build someone else's empire. And here's the kicker. The more specialized you are, the easier you are to replace. You're not a farmer who can grow his own dinner or a builder who can raise a roof. You're a brand strategist, a customer experience manager, a content coordinator. You survive by begging for a paycheck every 2 weeks, praying that the algorithm or the quarterly report doesn't decide your skill set is redundant. That's why growing your own food isn't just gardening. It's a revolutionary act. It's flipping the bird to every system designed to make you helpless. It's planting a seed and saying, this carrot is mine. No committee approved it. No CEO owns it. No supply chain controls it. And that kind of sovereignty? That's the beating heart of libertarianism, not the distorted version you see on TV, but the sacred truth buried underneath. True liberty isn't just voting every 4 years. It's putting your hands in the soil and feeding your family without asking for permission. Now, let me tell you a story about Masanobu Fukuoka, the Japanese farmer and philosopher who turned agriculture into a spiritual practice. Fukuoka didn't just grow food. He questioned the very foundations of modern farming. The ultimate goal of farming, he said, is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. Think about that for a second. When you farm with your whole heart, you're not just feeding yourself, you're refining your soul. You're reconnecting to the earth, to history, to the eternal rhythms that no government, no economic theory, no corporate interest can control. And Fukuoka wasn't some backwoods hermit. He was a scientist, trained in plant pathology, who walked away from the approved methods of industrial agriculture because he saw the lie. The more you intervene, the more you poison the system, until you're trapped in an endless cycle of chemicals and debt. His method, do-nothing farming, wasn't laziness. It was profound respect for the natural intelligence of the earth. And the harvest? Richer, healthier, freer. That's the kind of wisdom we've lost in a service economy. When your whole life revolves around trading your time for money, you lose touch with the seasons, the soil, the cycle of life and death. You become a creature of deadlines and KPIs, disconnected from the forces that actually sustain you. And the most dangerous part? You forget you even have a choice. You forget that your great-grandparents fed themselves without supermarkets, powered their homes without centralized grids, built their lives with tools they understood and could repair. But here's the beautiful truth. You can remember. You can relearn. You can reclaim that ancient knowledge, mix it with modern science, the real science, not the corporate-approved version, and build a life where your survival doesn't depend on a fragile web of global supply chains and financial manipulations. That's why, on our homestead, we don't just grow vegetables. We raise chickens, milk goats, and keep bees. Each species brings its own gifts: eggs, milk, honey, and most importantly, resilience. When you understand the cycles of birth, growth, harvest, and rest, you start seeing your own life differently. You realize you're not a passive consumer. You're an active participant in the dance of creation. And once you taste that power, you'll never settle for being a cog again. We forage too, not just for food, but for knowledge. Every mushroom, every wild herb is a lesson in humility and self-reliance. Nature doesn't care about your job title or your LinkedIn endorsements. She cares if you can tell the difference between food and poison, between healing and harm. That's the kind of education no university can sell you, because it's priceless. And it's knowledge you can pass down to your children, not as abstract theory, but as practical wisdom they can hold in their hands. And teaching others? That's not charity. It's self-preservation. Because the more people around us who know how to grow food, preserve seeds, raise animals, and fix machinery, the stronger our community becomes. That's real wealth. Not numbers in a bank account, but skills in the hands and wisdom in the heart. It's the kind of wealth no inflation can erode, no market crash can steal. You see, in a service economy, your value is dictated by someone else. You're only worth what the market says you are. And the market? It's a fickle beast, ruled by forces you'll never control. But in a self-sufficient economy, your value comes from what you can do, what you can grow, what you can build, what you can teach. And that value? It's yours forever. So here's the truth they don't want you to realize. The fate of the world doesn't belong to governments or corporations or think tanks. It belongs to people like you, willing to put their hands in the dirt, learn the old skills, and build a life that can't be outsourced or automated. That's the spirit of true libertarianism, the sacred, rebellious, self-reliant spirit that says, my life is my responsibility, and my freedom begins where dependence ends. That's why every tomato you grow, every egg you collect, every goat you milk is a small act of defiance and a massive leap toward freedom. And that, my friends, is what it means to live sustainably. It's not just about saving the planet. It's about saving your soul from the machinery of a system designed to turn you into a customer instead of a creator. And that's exactly why our garden, our orchard, our beehives, and our workshops aren't just hobbies. They're declarations. Declarations that we are free, that we remember who we are, and that we will teach our children to never, ever forget. The beauty of self-sufficiency is that it doesn't just put food on your table. It rewrites the very rules of how you experience life. When you live off-grid, balancing the raw challenges of nature with the sweetness of hard-earned convenience, you begin to realize something profound. Freedom doesn't mean living without problems. Freedom means having the power to solve those problems yourself, without waiting for permission, funding, or rescue from centralized authority. That, right there, is the holy essence of libertarianism, the real kind, the sacred kind, not the distorted caricature they feed you on the news. It's the ancient pact between human beings and reality. You want warmth? Chop your own wood. You want water? Dig your own well. You want comfort? Earn it. Every drop of water we use in our cabin has a backstory. It's not like flipping a faucet in some suburban McMansion where water flows like magic and nobody knows, or cares, where it comes from. Out here, water starts with a hole cut through the ice on a frozen quarry. A Honda pump we maintain like our lives depend on it, because they do. And a gravity-fed system that makes you appreciate every single cup. When you've hauled your own water, you'll never waste a drop again. You don't run the tap while brushing your teeth when you know exactly how many buckets it took to fill that tank upstairs. That's the thing service economies erase from your soul, the direct link between effort and reward. When water flows without consequence, heat arrives without labor, and food appears without dirt under your nails, you lose a primal sense of ownership over your own life. You become a renter in the truest sense, not just renting your house, but renting your existence, paying monthly fees for survival itself. It's the same with heating. In a world of thermostats and automated climate control, warmth is taken for granted. Out here, warmth is a love letter you write to your future self every time you split a log. It's waking up at 3 a.m., feeling the chill creep in, and knowing that if you want comfort, you have to earn it, right now. That wood stove is more than a heat source. It's a mirror. It shows you exactly how much you value your own comfort and what you're willing to do to secure it. There's no outsourcing that responsibility. And let me tell you, nothing, and I mean nothing, makes you more grateful for the simplest conveniences than living without them for a while. The first time we installed a propane on-demand water heater, it felt like wizardry. Hot water, instantly, without stoking a fire. I swear I could hear angels singing in the background. But here's the twist. Because we knew what life was like without it, we never took it for granted. Every hot shower was a celebration, not an expectation. That's the philosophical core of off-grid life. Every comfort is a gift you give yourself through your own labor and ingenuity. And because of that, every comfort carries meaning. It's the opposite of the service economy mindset, where convenience is king and effort is minimized at all costs. When life is too easy, gratitude dies. And without gratitude, freedom itself starts to feel meaningless, because if you don't value what you have, you won't fight to keep it. Now, I want you to think about this on a bigger scale. When society relies entirely on massive centralized systems for water, heat, food, and energy, what happens? Whoever controls those systems controls the people. If you can't survive without the system, you're not a citizen, you're a dependent, and dependents don't make history, they just endure it. This isn't just me ranting from the woods. History backs me up. Remember the ancient Roman aqueducts? They were marvels of engineering, sure, but they were also tools of control. The emperors knew that as long as the water flowed, the people stayed docile. Give them bread and circuses, Juvenal said. And the water was part of the circus. Control the water, control the warmth, control the food, and you control the people. That's why self-sufficiency isn't just a hobby for preppers and hermits. It's a political act, an economic act, a spiritual act. It's standing up and saying, I will not be controlled because I do not need what you're selling. That's the libertarian dream in its purest form, not the straw man they've built to scare you, but the sacred truth that free people create their own security. And let's not forget the troubleshooting. Off-grid life is a masterclass in engineering, improvisation, and cursing loudly at inanimate objects. When the pump quits, when the wood stove smokes, when the solar panels throw a tantrum, you don't call a technician. You become the technician. You learn how systems work. You develop a sixth sense for incoming failures, and you discover the strange joy of solving problems with duct tape, baling wire, and sheer stubbornness. It's funny how this constant tinkering, this never-ending stream of small crises actually makes you more free. Because every time you fix something, you gain a little more independence. You become less reliant on experts, less intimidated by technology, less likely to be bamboozled by shiny sales pitches. You become what the ancients called a competent man, the kind of person who can sail a ship, build a shelter, hunt a meal, and fix a machine. In short, you become dangerous. And that danger, the danger of self-reliance, is exactly why centralized systems fear people like us. Because we don't need them. And people who don't need the system are impossible to control. That's why they ridicule off-grid life as backwards, inconvenient, and unsophisticated. They want you to believe that freedom is too hard, too messy, too lonely. But they're wrong. Freedom is beautiful. It's challenging, yes, but it's also joyous, hilarious, and deeply meaningful. It's the kind of life that makes you laugh out loud when you finally get that damn water pump working again. So, if you're feeling the itch to take back your life one system at a time, to trade dependence for competence, to replace convenience with meaning, I want you to do something right now. Like this video, share it with every friend who's ever dreamed of escaping the rat race, and subscribe to this channel. Because this journey, it's just getting started. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Now, here's the part they never tell you in those glossy off-grid fantasy articles. The part where self-sufficiency stops being just about survival and becomes the foundation for real wealth. And no, I'm not talking about yachts and hedge funds. I'm talking about wealth in its oldest, truest form. The kind you build with your hands, pass down to your children, and never have to ask permission to create. Out here, your wealth isn't your job title. It's your orchard, your workshop, your livestock, your tools, your skills, and the reputation you build in your community. That's why when we talk about sustainable income, we're not talking about chasing viral TikToks or selling motivational courses online. We're talking about turning the land itself and the knowledge you gain living on it into a living, breathing, cash-flowing enterprise. It's what the ancient libertarians would call economic sovereignty, not the shallow freedom of choosing your boss, but the deep, unshakable freedom of knowing your livelihood comes directly from your own ingenuity. For us, it started with trees. I'm not just talking about chopping firewood to heat the cabin. I mean building a full-on tree service business, climbing, pruning, milling lumber, turning the very forest that surrounds our home into a steady, reliable source of income. It's hard work, sure, but it's honest work, and more importantly, it's work we control. There's no corporate HR department, no quarterly performance reviews, just me, the saw, and the tree. And that's the key. Every dollar we earn comes from something we built ourselves, something nobody can take away with a pink slip or a policy change. That's what real libertarian wealth looks like. It's not a number in a brokerage account. It's a skill set, a customer list built on trust, and the freedom to say no when a job doesn't fit your values. But we didn't stop there. The land itself became part of the economy we were building, not by exploiting it, but by sharing it. We opened up a little off-grid bed and breakfast, inviting people to come experience this life for themselves. And here's the kicker. We didn't just give them a nice place to sleep and some homemade jam. We gave them a glimpse of something priceless, the realization that they too could live this way. That's the kind of wealth that grows exponentially, because every guest who leaves inspired becomes a seed planted in the world beyond our fence line. And then there's the lemonade stand, our proudest little enterprise of all. See, we don't just want our kids to inherit land. We want them to inherit freedom. And that means teaching them from day one that money doesn't come from bosses or bureaucracies. It comes from solving problems, creating value, and understanding your own worth. So our daughter started her own business, selling lemonade to the guests, learning what it means to earn, to price, to negotiate, and to stand behind a product with her own name on it. That's real homeschooling, teaching freedom not as theory, but as practice. This whole journey, from that first salvaged outhouse to a thriving, diversified homestead economy, is proof of a truth the ancient Stoics understood better than most modern economists. Your fate is in your own hands. The service economy wants you to forget that. It wants you to believe that your survival depends on staying employed, staying obedient, staying small. But out here, we remember the old wisdom. We remember Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher who said freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And what lies beyond our control? The job market, the stock market, the currency exchange. But what lies within our control? Our hands, our land, our ingenuity, and our willingness to work. That's why the off-grid economy isn't just about self-sufficiency. It's about self-determination. It's about saying, my wealth comes from my labor, my creativity, and my relationship with this land, not from anyone else's approval. That's the libertarian dream in action, not the shallow talking points they throw around in election years, but the deep, ancient truth. A free man feeds himself, powers himself, shelters himself, and earns his keep on his own terms. So if you're sitting there, stuck in traffic, grinding away at a job that feels like it's draining your soul, let me leave you with this. You were not born to be a cog. You were born to be a creator. And the path to freedom isn't waiting for some political savior. It's building a life where no one can pull the rug out from under you because you wove that rug yourself. Whatever skills you have right now, start thinking about how you can turn them into something real, something you own, something that feeds you, something that no economic downturn can erase. Whether it's a backyard garden, a side hustle fixing bikes, or a little workshop teaching your neighbors how to ferment vegetables, every step you take toward self-sufficiency is a step toward true wealth. And the best part? You don't need anyone's permission to begin. So my friends, as we wrap up this journey through off-grid life and liberty, let me leave you with one last thought. Freedom isn't something you demand. It's something you build day by day with your own two hands. And if we can do it, from a half-rotted outhouse to a thriving homestead, you can too. Now, get out there. Plant your seeds, sharpen your saw, teach your kids, and above all, remember, your freedom is worth every blister, every splinter, and every single drop of sweat. Because at the end of the day, the only wealth that matters is the kind you create with your own hands, on your own land, for your own life. Until next time, stay free, stay fierce, and never forget, the world belongs to those brave enough to build it themselves.